Welcome to Americana Archives. Today's headline is Davy Crockett. The subheadline says, Famous Frontiersman Who Died in the Alamo. It says, Perhaps strictly speaking, Davy Crockett was not a trailbreaker of any great importance. Although he was one of the first to follow the trail to Texas, he certainly did not blaze it. And his pathfinding activities were in the main confined to certain portions of western Tennessee. But for all that, he was a fellow spirit of Kit Carson and Daniel Boone, and he belonged to that advance guard of American adventurers whose exploits made possible the settlement of the West. Certainly, Davy Crockett was as picturesque a backwoodsman as any one of them, and far better known than most. He was an Irishman, this Davy Crockett, and Job's proverbial turkey was an emblem of bloated wealth compared with Crockett Sr., Davy's father, who settled in eastern Tennessee. Before he was 13 years old, Davy ran away, picked up a living somewhere in various portions of the country, from Tennessee to the Atlantic seaboard, and returned home at 15, being then too large to be spanked, to help his father, who was still struggling frantically to keep the wolf from the door. Davy once worked 6 months to pay a $25 debt of his father's, and almost a year to settle a $50 obligation. Then when he was 18 years old, and hadn't a penny to bless himself with, he married an Irish girl a year or two younger than himself, installed her in a log cabin that had contained neither bed, chair, table, knife, or fork, and settled down to enjoy life. However, he borrowed $15 and fixed the place up pretty grand, he assures us. He made a living largely by hunting and trapping, but Davy Crockett was always one of those whose neighbor's smoke vexed his eyes. And at 21, he decided that the part of Tennessee he was in was getting too thickly populated. So he packed his wife, 2 children, and household goods upon 1 mare and 2 colts, and started for the western part of the state. There he found abundance of game, and there he stayed 2 years. Then the Creek War broke out, and Davy Crockett joined Jackson's command and fought Indians for a while. At 23, he is described as a blue-eyed, sandy-haired man, big and loose swung, with a straight nose and a merry mouth. He made good as a scout, and was regarded as a capable and trustworthy person, possessed of a good many of the attributes of leadership. When the war was over, Davy went back to pioneering. This time he chose as his field what was known as the Cherokee Purchase, a wild and lawless country in what was then the Far West, a country only recently open to white men. He throve, and though the country had no laws, Crockett was made a judge. Also, he was a colonel of militia and a great man in those parts. He had a ready gift for storytelling, and his neighbors chose him to represent them in the legislature. This new domain of Crockett's was on the Mississippi River, right across from the New Madrid district in Missouri, and it was a great land for black bears, which were found in the canebrakes. Crockett reveled in it. 1 year he killed 105 bears, and once he shot 3 in a half hour. Tales of his prowess as a hunter spread over Tennessee, and even the people back east, who weren't as proficient then as they have afterwards become, heard of Davy Crockett. Largely because he was an eminent hunter, the people of his district sent him to Congress. Certainly, Davy Crockett must have stirred up Washington a bit. He started east in regular frontier costume, moccasins, leather shirt, and all. At Raleigh, North Carolina, he met a stranger. Here is Crockett's account of the conversation. Said he, "Hurrah for Adams," and said I, "Hurrah for hell and praise your own country." And he said, "Who are you?" Said I, "I'm that same Davy Crockett, fresh from the backwoods, half man, half alligator, can wade the Mississippi, leap the Ohio, ride a streak of lightning, slide down a honey locust, and not get scratched. I can whip my weight in wildcats, hug a bear too close for comfort, and eat any man opposed to Jackson." However, he changed his mind afterward about Jackson. Crockett was as independent as Old Hickory himself, and he soon clashed with him on a number of subjects. In 1834, the Tennessee woodsman made a trip through the East, speaking at Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, and there was some talk, which Crockett seems to have taken seriously, of running him for the presidency. It was, of course, the merest chatter, for Davy Crockett, for all his virtues, was in no way fitted to be President of the United States. He had much native shrewdness, undoubted courage, and his integrity was above question, but he did not know enough about governing or about national questions to be possible presidential timber. However, the big cities of the East received him with enthusiasm. Great crowds turned out to hear him speak. He was the guest of the city of Boston for a week, and Philadelphia gave him a silver-mounted rifle, which the backwoodsman christened Betsy, and with which he gave exhibitions of shooting, hitting $0.25 at 50 yards without difficulty. He said he believed he'd be able to shoot the gun when he'd gotten accustomed to it. Then Crockett went back to Tennessee and was defeated for Congress in his own district. His defeat was a real humiliation to him, and he had once made up his mind to remedy what seemed to him a calamity by going further west. It was just at the time Texas was winning its independence from Mexico, and the future Lone Star State was the best place in America for excitement. It was the last frontier in those days, and by all odds the most eventful one. So Crockett went to Texas. There is a curious old volume which purports to be an autobiography of the famous hunter, which tells many fantastic things about his journey to Texas and his experience after he got there. How he made his trip in company with a thimble rigger or shell game man, an Indian, a bee hunter, and a private who had been a member of Jean Lafitte's Barataria colony. How he pleaded with the thimble rigger to abandon his evil mode of living and turn honest. And how, when the thimble rigger insisted that he didn't know any means of making an honest livelihood and had failed at it time and again, Davy told him, if you can't live like an honest man, you can at least die like a brave one. And the story goes on to tell how the thimble rigger did die like a brave man in the famous capture of the Alamo. Davy Crockett may have written these things down, and it is very possible that somebody else, with an active imagination, wrote them afterward. All we know for certain is that Crockett was one of the defenders of the Alamo during its 11-day siege by Santa Anna's troops, that he killed a good many Mexicans with Betsy in that time, and that he died in the last savage fighting at the Alamo March 6th, when the Mexicans surged over the old adobe building and butchered the worn-out pioneers. We know that Colonel James Bowie, inventor of the Bowie knife, who lay in bed too feeble to stand upon his feet, killed 3 Mexicans at his bedside before they finally killed him. That Crockett was one of the last 6 men alive, beating down his assailants with his clubbed rifle when they were too close for him to reload his gun and shoot anymore. Some historians say that the 6 surrendered finally and were butchered a little later at Santa Anna's order. Others that they never surrendered, but died with their backs against the wall, still fighting. From all we know of Davy Crockett, the last story seems more likely. This story came from the great state of South Carolina, being reported in the Yorkville Enquirer of December 12, 1913. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.